Hi, I'm Melissa from Tassie Stitches. If this is the first time you're here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, thank you very much for coming back. Today we've got a few things to cover. So we're going to start off by going through how the monthly challenges for the Down Under Divas are going to work this year. Then I'll go into my yearly plans and then into what my plans for January will be. So we'll start off with the Down Under Divas monthly challenges. So this year we're ambling through the alphabet with 2 letters each month, with December picking up the last 4. So we're going to start off in January with A and B. The months follow a fairly similar pattern. So the first 2 prompts for the 2000 stitches are each to do with a pattern title. So when you're talking about a pattern title that starts with the letter B, it can be something like Band of Braves, like by Long Dog Sampler, or Baskets by Rosewood Manor. Or it could be something like The Bald Eagle by Cottage Garden Samplings. I think that's who that's by. So basically, it only works with the first word of the pattern title. The only exceptions are if your pattern title starts with the word the, or a, or and, or if it's a descriptor like a lot of Haid patterns. There's minis, there's max colours, there's supersized. So you can chop off, if you want to, that first word to make it fit. So for instance, I've got a Haid which is Ornament Witching Hour. So I could use that for ornament, for O, or I could chop off the ornament because that's a Haid descriptor and call it Witching Hour for W. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. If you do need to ask questions, please ask them down below here or in the Down Under Divas group. The next one is colour. So colour can be generic. So for instance, for the letter B, there's brown, blue, black, and any other generic B colour you can think of if I've missed one. Or it can be a specific colour put out by a designer. So for instance, Garden Gate would be a G, or Dragonfly would be a D colour. So if you stitch in fancy floss or silks and that particular colour has a special name, then you can use that name. Just make sure that you take a picture of that floss tag with your first photo. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. So with colour, that is prompt number 3 always. And then if you can do a colour again, or you want to do a colour again, that will be prompt 5, and they're both 1,000 stitches. The 4th prompt will always be the designer prompt. So with designer, you can use the company of the design company, like Heaven and Earth Designs, Long Dog Samplers. So Heaven and Earth Designs would be H, Long Dog Samplers would be L. You can use the artist. So if you're stitching a full coverage, often there's an artist associated with that piece. So Amy Stewart, Anya Kai, Stuart Morrison, I think is another one. So you could use the artist, or you can use the person behind that design company. So for instance, Michelle Sayeta is behind Haid, or Jules Line is behind Long Dog Samplers. So for those, you could use a J and an L for Jules Line, or an M and an S for Michelle Sayeta. So I think designers is fairly easy to manipulate if you need to. And again, that's prompt 4, or it can also be for prompt 5. And they're both 1,000 stitches. Then the last 6 remaining 500 stitch prompts are all just A is 4, B is 4. And I've just picked fairly generic things, so hopefully somebody has most of those. Always remember that this year, if you want to do a harder version, you can make sure that prompt A is an A designer and prompt B is a B designer, or prompt A is a C designer, and prompt 2 is a D designer. Pattern. So yeah, prompt 1 would be an A pattern, prompt 2 would be a B pattern for January. I'm going to try and do the hard version, but I don't have patterns for all of them, so we'll just do the best that we can. And you can do that the same with colour and designer. So if you want to do 2 colours and do it a bit harder, pick an A and a B colour. If you want to do 2 designers and you want to make it a bit harder, pick an A and a B designer. If you don't have an A pattern and a B pattern, you can use 2 A's or you can use 2 B's. The same with colours and designers. There must be a different whip. They cannot be the same whip. And with designers and colours, it can't be the same colour repeated and it can't be the same designer repeated. So as long as they're 2 individual designers, 2 individual patterns, or 2 individual colours, that's perfectly fine. You can use the same project for pattern title and designer because they're different types of prompts. So hopefully that makes sense. Penalty stitches for monthly challenges. So there's 2 different types of ways you can get penalty stitches for our monthly challenges. So the first one, which is on offer every month to everybody, is a free pass. Now I have heard some people on FlossTube in the past mention that they thought that these were only available for the 500 stitch prompts, and that's not true. You can use this free pass on any prompt that you want to for the whole month. So that can be a 2,000 stitch prompt, it can be a 1,000 stitch prompt, or it can be a 500 stitch prompt, but you only get one of those every month. The other option for penalty stitches for monthly projects is to go over to the monthly penalty nomination event and nominate a project you would like to use for penalty stitches. And you can use these interchangeably. If you'd like to use up your free pass but also use others with your monthly penalty project, that's perfectly fine. If you would like to do all penalty project, that's also fine. You don't have to use the monthly free pass if you don't want to, but it's there. Just make sure if you're nominating a project in the penalty project event that you have that nominated by the 3rd of each month. And you must be able to complete all the stitches you nominate on that whip for that month. You can't change that whip mid-month. However, if you're like me and you nominate a project for the whole year, if you get 3 or 4 months into the year or 6 months into the year and you decide you're sick of that project, you can change it. Just go into that event and change or renominate another project. And that's perfectly fine as long as you do it by the 3rd of the month. So I think that covers monthlies as much of what I can think of. So that's Down Under Divas. I hope that made sense. If that's all you're here for, thanks very much for coming. If you'd like to know how I plan my year out, then stick around and we'll get on to that next. So firstly, when I plan my year, my projects or what I stitch each month is generally centered around the projects that I pick for the Down Under Diva challenges. And believe it or not, I don't actually write the challenges to fit my whips, and you'll see that this month. So to start off with, I usually have a focus piece. Last year that was the Hate Sale. Not doing the Hate Sale this year. So this year my focus piece will be, and I've actually got a picture I can show you, will be the Spring Garden Band Sampler. Oh, sorry, I'm just learning how to use this. By Stitching Cabin. So this is actually a sale this year. So I'll be stitching on this every month. I most likely won't be keeping up with the sale because they never do, but I'll stitch each section in the month that it's due. So I don't finish the January section, then I'll start stitching the February section in February. And that's perfectly fine with me, and that's how I stitch a lot of my sales. So that's going to be my focus piece for the year. So you'll see that cropping up every month. It's going to be filling in some places, but I'll explain that a bit later on. But that essentially, you'll see that pretty much every month cropping up. And that'll be a new start on January 1st, so I don't have anything to show you for that, not even fabric, because I haven't dyed that yet. So that is my focus piece. Then I do play Whip Go, and my Whip Go goals are year-long goals. So when a Whip Go piece is called for me, I try and fit it into one of the monthly prompts. But if I can't, it's not the end of the world because my goal is for the whole year. Then I have 2 family pieces that I stitch on the I try and stitch on them for the birthdays of those two people, for my husband and my son. Sometimes they don't always get stitched on the right day, but at least they get touched in the month. So the first one is my son's piece, and this will be changing sometime during the year, I imagine, because it's almost finished. So this is Dinosaur Circle, and I stitched this. Oh, sorry. Got it. So that's what it's going to look like, and this is what I've actually got. So this is for my son. Ooh. And you can see I've only got a little bit up here to do and a bit of filling in down here. So my aim for this is to stitch on this on the 22nd of every month, a minimum of 100 stitches. Now sometimes these get assigned to a prompt, so they get quite a few more stitches. But this month for Dinosaur Circle, it's only doing its daily thing. The other one is Enterprise, which I can't say is my jam. It's not my favourite. My husband saw another floss tuber stitching this, or possibly going to stitch this in a haul stash type video, and he expressed that he really liked the look of that. So now I'm stitching it. It's not my favourite. I really don't like it. I'm not sure how I'm going to show this to you because it's very huge. I'll do it on the back of that. So I'll take that down so I can show you. So this is stitched on 32 count. Oh, that's not working. 32 count black Belfast, just as Zweigart colour. You can't really see that side there. Sorry, I can't really see what I'm doing. No, it's the other side. Sorry, everything's mirrored. So this is where it's at. Essentially, I've done predominantly all of the cross stitch, and now I'm just left with most of the back stitch. There's still a bit of cross stitch to do. I hate back stitch. So thankfully, that only comes out one day every month. And I'll just put that back in its bag. So that's Enterprise. That is a free pattern, and you can find that on the Lord Libidan site. Oh, sorry, zip. Oh, and I should say my son's is 1/1 DMC on 22 count. I stitch a lot of these, so when this one finishes, another one will come in. So far we've finished 2. So that is my monthly family pieces that crop up every month. Then I have stitch goals for all of my projects. I have around 50 to 53 projects on the go. I'll never have more than 53 purely because that's all that fits on 2 pages of my notebook. But so I do have yearly goals for my projects. For the 2 family pieces, it's just that they get touched for at least one day every month for a minimum of 100 stitches. Then I have a couple of needlework pieces, which you'll see down the track. And my goal for them is to touch them 6 times a year because they're not my favourite. I usually try and alternate them between months, but this year might be a bit different. And I have another pattern that I won't show you today that's called Patchwork Sampler. Some of you are probably quite familiar with that one by Jan Houtman. A lot of people are stitching that, and that again for me only has a stitch goal of 6 days over the whole year. Often gets more because it generally gets pulled out for a lot of colour challenges, but its goal is only 6 days a year. It's not a priority for me. Then after that, all my full coverage projects, of which there will be 15 coming into this year, my goal is to get 5,000 stitches on them. If they're on my Whip Go board, they're very likely to reach that goal because my Whip Go board goals I try and hit as best as I can. My other projects do sometimes tend to fall by the wayside, but that is the overall goal, 5,000 stitches each. Then the projects that are on my Whip Go board that aren't family projects, that aren't the needlework projects, that aren't Patchwork Sampler, and that aren't a full coverage, their goal is 4,000 stitches. So you'll see them crop up during the year, and I'll point them out as they come up. But so they have 4,000. I think there's about 12 or 13 of those this year that have a goal of 4,000 stitches. Then all of my other projects have a goal of around 2,500 to 3,000 stitches. That's what I aim for. Some go over because they meet prompts more often or because I prefer to stitch on them. It's just a general goal. If I don't hit that goal, it doesn't matter. It's just something I'm aiming for. Sorry, there's a mosquito. So that's kind of how I set out my year. This year I'm also going to try and do temperature stitching. Not sure how that's going to work, but we're going to give it a go and see how we go. I do also play in other prompt groups like fandom stitching. Not sure how that'll go this year in Discord, but we'll give it a go. I usually try and do their weeklies if they fit in with the patterns that I've got or that I'm stitching for that month, because they generally don't pull in additional projects just to stitch for outside of Down Under Diva monthly group prompts. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but generally not. They usually try and work on their monthlies, but again, only if they fit what I'm working on. And I work in a lot of other groups, but not a lot of them are prompt-based. I think the only other prompt-based group I'm in the moment is Magical Stitches. And again, I usually only stitch the prompts that match the projects that I'm working on that month. But we can delve into that because they haven't been released yet, so we can delve into those a bit more as they get released. This year, like I said, I'm also doing temperature stitching, but also the deck of whips, the Down Under Divas annual challenge deck of whips. So for that, there's 52 projects for the whole year, drawn at random. I will be working 300 stitches on each of those for the months. And for the months that have 4 Mondays, and there's not many of them, there is more with 4, I think. Yeah, most have 4 Mondays, at least. Most have 5. So deck of whips is 4, so they will be taking up 3 not quite 3 whole days of stitching, because the stay of stitching for me is about 500 stitches. So they will take up they'll take up 1,200 stitches in a month. So that's where my stitching in the cabin piece will come in as well. So if there's 5 Mondays in a month, and there often is, that'll pick up the extra 300 stitches to make up 3 full days of stitching on those overall. My month's pretty structured. Maybe one day I'll show you my notebook, but for today we won't do that. So I think that's how my year's going to work. So let's look at maybe I'll show you my book for January. Let's see how January is going to work. So like I said, I generally follow the Down Under Divas prompts. So I'll show you what I'm going to stitch for those. So the first one up for me is A, Designer A, and so that is And a Forest Grew by Rosewood Manor. So I'm stitching this on a piece of fabric that I have dyed myself. It's quite a light green colour, so it's probably not going to show up on screen, but we'll have a go anyway. Sorry, I don't have a board. I need to get one of those. So we'll get rid of that picture. So this is And a Forest Grew. Hopefully you can see that. I kind of stitch all over the place. No, you can't see that. Oh, sorry, everything's in reverse. So who knows where I'll choose to stitch. I'm hoping to come back on Sundays and give you updates, because I'm hoping to be able to do the draws for Deck of Whips every Sunday on FlossTube. Otherwise, they'll just be posted in that event. So that is And a Forest Grew, and that will be getting 2,000 stitches in January. The next one for me is the Bee Whip, prompt number 2. So that for me is Band of Braves by Long Dog Samplers, and that's the picture of that there. And this is where I'm up to. I do really like this piece. I don't tend to stitch on it much, but I do really like it. So we'll get rid of that. And this is where I'm up to. A long way to go, but this is where we're at right now. Hopefully you can see that okay. Yep. So there's a lot of black in this piece. Again, this is on fabric dyed by me. Oh, and I should have said, and a forest screw is on a 40 count, 1/1, or called for DMCs. And this is on a 32 count, 2/2. And it's a 32 count even weave. Dyed by me in the colourway Donkey. So that's that one. So that will also get 2,000 stitches. Then on to colour. So I'll be doing Peacock and a Unicorn for colour, and I've chosen the colour brown. So I'll be stitching potentially in lots of different colour browns, but mostly in the dark brown that they use to outline all of or most of the items in. So this one I have a reasonable amount of progress on. Sorry, hopefully I'll get the hang of this backward stuff eventually. Sorry, the lighting isn't great. It's starting to fade a bit. I'll come back this way. And I do tend to work up in this corner, so that's probably where I'll work, up in that corner. And so that will be 1,000 stitches in brown. So we'll see how you go. You can see on that I've done a lot of colour prompts, blue, white, red. So that's a peacock and a badger. That's on 40 count. It's a flax by Zweigart, and the pattern is by Scarlet Letter. I think quite a few floss tubers are doing that one as well. Moving on, for prompt number 4 is designer. So my designer is Annette Schwarzmiller. She has Whoopie Cat on Etsy. I don't know if this is still available to stitch. I haven't checked, but this for me was I really like this. Green is my favourite colour, so not a surprise. You won't be able to see much of this because there's a lot of white on white stitching. This year it got pulled out for a lot of white on white. Well, you can see that kind of. So that's our starting point on that one. Hopefully I'll be able to get into some of the other colours in there and not just do white. So that's stitched in the called for DMCs on just a 22 count. Moving on is Little Cake Shop. Now I'm not going to take this one out of the Q-Snap because it is just way too hard to get back in. I'll show you a picture. This is my biggest project, and at the moment we are right up in the middle of the ceiling. So take that down, and that's where I am. So this is 1/1, 25 count on just Lugana in the called for DMC. This is by Haid. And that's my second oldest whip. So that'll get another 1,000 stitches towards its 5,000 stitch goal for the year. Moving on is Sugar Glider. So this is one of the Cottage Sampling Stitches Year of the Woods for this year. And this is what it looks like. I think this is so cute. This is my Australian animal. I started this on my birthday last year and got a fair amount of progress on it. So this is on a piece of fabric that I dyed myself called Forest Floor, and this is Sugar Glider. If you do that, you might be able to see it a bit better. So I really love how he's turning out. Hopefully we'll be able to make a good chunk of progress on him. But for January, he will get 500 stitches. Sorry, I've just got to put everything away or I'll never find it again. With 2 cats and a dog, things generally go missing. So that is that one. That'll get 500 stitches. Next one is Modern Folk Embroidery Sale from 2023. So again, I'm stitching this on a piece of fabric I dyed myself. It's a greeny colour. And the two colours that I've chosen to stitch it in is DMC, let me have a look, 3852, which is the yellow colour. And then the green colour is Cottage Garden Threads in Cloth Bound. So we'll take that down. So this is for the prompt arm. I haven't stitched the arm yet, but there will be an arm up in that open section at the top. And that's where we're at. So it's quite a big one, but because we're stitching it in January, we'll be stitching in what was the January part of the sale, which is that top section up there. So we might fill in that top part of the pattern there. So that's another 40 count fabric. That's probably my favourite besides 22 to stitch on at the moment. And that'll get 500. Then we've got 13th Colony Bay, which is a pattern by the Bay Needle Arts. It's actually 3 patterns all joined together, and this is what they'll look like all joined together. I've completed the middle section completely and now working on the left-hand side. So we'll see how we can get this up. Sorry, it's quite a large one. So that's where I am so far. So I really like this one. This is on a Perman linen. I think it's called French Rain in 32 count, and it's 2/2 in the called for DMCs with one blend, because Donna likes to use a colour 731, I think it is, which is either discontinued or not, just not available in Australia. So I have to do a blend for that one. So that'll get another 500 stitches, and that was for the prompt boat because there's lots of boats. Moving on is what is called Sampler 14 on the Etsy website. This is by 2x2 Stitch Art, but I call this Castle Sampler. One of the ladies was stitching this in Down Under Divas a few years ago, and it really caught my attention. So I'm stitching this in Silks by You with one of their seasonal silk packs that they did that they do. I was a member of that a couple of years ago. And this, I think, was their winter pack, so I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this. But I've just started on some of the border. Again, this was a start. Let me get rid of that. This was a start for my birthday this year. So you can see I've just done a little bit of the border. This again is on, I think, Zweigart Flax. No, this is on Zweigart Platinum in 40 count. Platinum and Flax are probably the two Zweigart colours that I tend to stitch on. I find them really good neutrals. So that's Platinum. Last one is also one of my Whip Go draws I think I missed one. I'll go back to it. This was one of my Whip Go draws this month. Its goal is 5,000 stitches because it's a full coverage. This is Witching Hour. It's an ornament by Haid with artwork by Lisa Parker. I'm doing this on a 25 count charcoal even weave. And this is where we're up to. So this will get 500 stitches this month, and this is for the prompt books because the cat is lying on a lot of books and it reminds me of my black cat. So that's why we're stitching that one. And I don't know about you, but I don't really like these large nerd tubes, but we're persevering with that one anyway. So the last prompt, the one I didn't show you, the one I missed, was Angel. So angel for me, I don't have any projects with angels. So this is where that free pass comes in, the January free pass. I'm not using my monthly penalty project this month. But enterprise was also called, I'm not going to pull it out of the bag again, but I'll show you the picture again, was also called for WhipGo. So that has been put in place of angel for 500 stitches. So it will get a few more stitches than normal this month, but we'll see how we go. It might be a mix of cross stitch and back stitch, but it'll probably only be done in 100 stitch increments because I really don't like stitching on this one at all. So we'll see how we go. So that is it as far as Down Under Divas goes. Then I mentioned we're going to try temperature stitching. So I'm not going to allocate projects to all the numbers because there's certain projects that I really want to fit into temperature stitching and some I don't really care about but might care more about next month. So we're going to allocate them as the stitches come up. So I'm going to show you the first 5 that will potentially get attached to temperature stitching. So the first one is baskets. Now this is almost finished. This could be a finish this month if I pull my finger out, but I don't really like working on this project because it's done in the Valdani threads and I really don't like working in the Valdani threads. And what I've got to go is just hopping around and filling in all the random stitches that I missed. So that's why it may or may not make a finish this year. If it doesn't get finished, it'll be the first project to jump into temperature stitching until it gets done. So this is where we're up to. So as you can see, it's almost finished. I've just got to fill in a lot of random 1 stitch here, 5 stitch there, fill in little holes, do little center stitches in the flowers. So that's kind of where we're at. So this is on 28 count. Again, this is a piece of donkey dyed by me using the called for Valdani threads. I won't be using them again. This will be the only project I ever stitch in Valdani threads. I really just don't enjoy the way they lay on the fabric. I don't enjoy working with them. So we'll finish that piece off and move on to something else. So the second project that will get put up for temperature stitching will be Letters from Hogwarts. So this is the Stitch Your Own Adventure that was put out by Stuart Cunningham from Cunningham Cross Stitch quite a few years ago now. It's almost done. This is another one where I've just got random stitches to do all over the place because I just jump around and it's not my favourite to stitch on either. So I just kind of jump around to where I can get mass stitching done when it comes out for a project. And so now I've just got lots of places to fill in. So this is where we're up to. Again, it's almost finished. This is on a piece of fabric from Crafty Leanie. She dyed this specially for me to do this project on. So as you can see, I'm a Ravenclaw and most of it is done. There's just there's some back stitching to do down on the letters at the bottom and a few random places to fill in stitches as well as I've done the main stitching in the border, but I haven't filled in the random smaller colours. So there's a couple of shades of brown that need to go into those. Areas as well. So that'll be the second one that gets allocated a number in temperature stitching. And for temperature stitching, it'll just be 100 stitches when the temperature is cold. And I'm using the same method as Jen from Jen the Caffeinated Crafter, so just using the last digit of the temperature. I live in Tasmania, so unfortunately down here we don't get a lot of variation in temperature, so it might only move 1 or 2 degrees. So that's why I'm not allocating temperature numbers straight away because these are the projects I want to start working on, so they'll get allocated the first lot of temperatures that come up. The next one that will be allocated will be Summer Montage. Now this is charted by Pain Free Crafts. It's the artwork is by Janet Stevers. I believe it is now a retired project. This is on a 25 count easy count in called for DMC, and that is where I'm up to, so only in the top corner. I will show you a cover picture of this, but I really love this project. Sorry, the light is so bad today. That's a little bit better. So I've almost finished that rose, so I'll show you a picture of that. So I liked all of these patterns, but I ended up picking the summer one only. When I heard, I bought this before they retired, but I was contemplating buying them all, but I've got so many full coverage, I don't need more. But I was drawn to this one more because this one spoke to me more as an Australian, and also because I lived on Christmas Island for a few months and it's got a red crab on it. So you don't see a lot of things with red crabs. So that's why that one got picked. And then the last one, and because this, in my mind, probably won't fit a lot of prompts throughout the year, is Nature's King. So I have finished my 6 pages for receiving the 12 free charts. So this was the Hayes sale for this year. Not many people chose to stitch this. This is Nature's King, obviously charted by Hayes. The artist is Carol Cavallaris, I think. This is 6 pages completed. Well, I'll take that picture down. And I really like this. I was surprised a lot more people chose not to stitch this. And unfortunately, you can see the lines on here. In real life, they're not that prominent, so I'm not that worried about it. And when it's finished, I'll give it a wash. But I'm not that stressed. Surprisingly, I really enjoyed stitching this. I thought I'd get sick of it because that's, 40,000 something stitches in there. I was doing just shy of 4,000 stitches a month to reach that goal, so it must be slightly more than 40,000. I hit that goal last night, so I was pretty happy that it got done. And that is on just a 28 count, 1/1. Most of my full coverages are stitched on 25 count, but that was the first one. Oh no, I've got another one. I started on 28 count, decided I really liked 28 count. So the few that I've started since starting that one have now been on 28 count. So that's it. We'll find out what Deca Whips will be on Sunday, next Sunday. So hopefully I'll come back with some progress for the first 3 days of January, so there won't be much to show, but we can show you what I've done. I'll show you my diary or my journal. So people think I'm crazy, but this is how I plan. So this is my pages from my planner. So it's just a bullet journal. I draw it up myself, and then I allocate each sticky note is worth either 300 or 400 stitches for the projects. So a 2,000 stitch project has 6 stickers, 2 which are worth 400 stitches and 4 which are worth 300 stitches. Often I don't stick to this formula, and these are all sticky notes, so they get moved around based on what the prompts for other groups are. So that's my plan, that's what I'm working towards for the month, but then when I work on things depends on fandom stitching prompts or magical stitching prompts, or if something else crops up where it has to be something specific that I've stitched on, then I try and stitch on that if I can. So they get all jumbled up, and I work on a mixture of things throughout the days of the month. I don't necessarily stitch to the stitch counts of the stickers either, but they're just a guide to let me know how much of a particular project I've still got to go. So that's kind of how I plan. That's my plans for the year and for the month. I hope you found that slightly interesting. Let me know if you've got any questions below, if you've got any comments. Hopefully I'll get better at filming on this program. This is a fairly new program for me, and I'm still learning. It's all backwards. that I can see, so I'm not so good at that. Thanks so much for sticking it out to the end. Hopefully I'll see you next Sunday. If I don't, I'll still put the card up in Deck of Whips, but hopefully I'll be here and be able to show you on the floss tube and we can draw it together. So hopefully see you next Sunday. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.